What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. We're back today for some more Pathfinder 2nd Edition playtest discussion. Over the past week, I've done my fair share of scrolling, looking around in forums, watching other YouTube videos, trying to get as much information as I can about this exciting change to our favorite role-playing game. I might make it a habit if we can squeeze the time in once a week to check in with the stuff I find that is definitive. Thursday night at GaryCon 2018, a game of Pathfinder 2nd Edition was played, and some of the details about it have been released to the internet, and as such, I shall now release them to you. First and foremost, a lot of stuff has come out about the Alchemist, and yes, the Alchemist's iconic will be a goblin. That guy hanging out on the playtest cover art, yep, that's him. His name is Fumbus. The biggest change to Alchemists for Pathfinder 2nd Edition is that Alchemists are no longer spellcasters. Now they simply do alchemy. This involves a skill check and a certain number of alchemical preparations that the Alchemist has per day. The bomb feature from the Alchemist class is also gone in favor of alchemical preparations. Some of that is still a little gray, but the iconic goblin who was played at GaryCon threw acid and fire. His pre-gen sheet had 2 acid bombs prepped and 6 fire bombs prepped. In addition, the playtest has an extensive section devoted to alchemical items and the crafting of them. It feels more correct, I will say, that the alchemist is not a spellcaster, but the alchemist is someone who uses science to explode you. I'm looking forward to seeing the implementation, but it feels to me kind of like taking the alchemist's spells away from him, kind of nerfs him. Of course, this is an entirely different system, but speaking of spells, an iconic cleric was played at that table. The cleric's cantrips were unlimited, but she had 1 prepared first level spell as a level 1 pregen. When a cleric is healing, a cleric can spend more than 1 of its 3 actions to increase the potency of its healing. Now, whether that means the character wasn't optimized or whether that means that spellcasters will just have less resources may remain to be seen. However, this is obviously a huge change moving forward, and I hope that speaks a little bit to the balance of martial and casting characters, the disparity between the almighty wizard and the lowly fighter that we often see in Pathfinder 1st Edition. As we've all heard by now, we get 3 actions in a given round, and that means, even at level 1, we can attack 3 times, but that second and third attack are taken at a -5 and a -10 penalty, which is probably obviously something you maybe not buy off, but learn to shrug off as you level up. If nothing else, one thinks, hey, maybe we can go crit fishing with this. That's the next big change I wanted to talk about with you guys today. Fumbles and criticals are being reworked. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition's playtest, if you miss by 10 or more, it is a crit fumble. If you hit by 10 or more, it is a critical hit. I'm still not entirely sure how to feel about this. I know that means that if you go up against something that's just way, way, way over your head and there's no chance of you hitting it, it's going to be bad for you, worse so than in 1st edition where you probably just died. Here, if you're fumble, I got an attack in, fumble, natural 20, assuming natural 20s even work the way that we expect them to. Those encounters are going to be very short, very painful, and they're going to teach players a very hard lesson about staying in their lane. By that same notion, at high level play, if you feel like wandering into the goblin camp, you're probably going to critically hit every single one of them consecutively, so your chaotic evil characters who like to go just kick around the weak, or people who think they're playing Grand Theft Auto in our Pathfinder games, this makes it a lot easier for them to achieve what they're doing, and it makes it go by a lot quicker as well, I will say. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out moving forward for sure. As a guy who really likes rewarding critical hits and punishing critical fumbles, this is probably going to be right up my alley. Sign me up. The next most radical thing we see, and this is something that I had speculated would happen, there are no more attacks of opportunity. Rest in peace, my combat patrol builds. Rest in peace, my combat reflexes builds. They are now called reactions, and each character had different types of reactions. Those types weren't detailed anywhere I looked, but you imagine your paladins and fighters and barbarians, oh my, can hit people back. Perhaps the rogues and other Dexy builds can step back. I'm not going to grognard quite yet about this. I'm still going to take it with a grain of salt, but this one's pretty rough to swallow for me because, again, I like being able to attack 15 times and then it's my turn. A bit of a note on the side of the normal. The numbers appear to be similar. For example, a fighter might have +6 to attack at first level, DC of spells 14, AC from 14 to 18. All of the basic stuff that we are expecting to see should still be pretty much the same thing. The players at GaryCon played level 1 pre-gens. Each pre-gen had its own feat. The humans, of course, had 2. From the other sources I've been sifting through, it does appear class feats will be a thing every other level. Feat trees appear to be consolidated and are very short lists, not unlike how the feats work in Starfinder. Speaking of Starfinder, it looks like at first level we will have racial hit points in addition to our class hit points. Moving forward, it will probably be just class hit points, but nevertheless, we are taking some cues from Starfinder moving forward. Our hit points and our feats are going to look a little more like they did in space, as opposed to how they look on Galarion itself. We've talked about how magic items are going to steer away from the big 6. It looks like now it's going to be more about how you use your items, the effectiveness of them, and how you prep for a given day. And to me, that kind of speaks, and again, I haven't played a whole lot of 5th edition, but it kind of speaks like Attunement does. Expect to hear more of that in the coming weeks, and when you do, you'll hear it here. On 2 positive notes, however, a couple of items that often don't see play, especially in super optimized parties, thrown weapons seem to be much more viable in the playtest. And in addition to that, shields are getting an overhaul virtually from the ground up. Shields are now an active bonus, requiring the player to actively use an action to raise their shield. Think holding down left trigger whilst playing Skyrim. If you aren't doing this, if you don't spend that action, your shield is dangling at your side, and thus no AC bonus. When your shield is up, if something hits you, you can mitigate the damage by the hardness of the shield. If the shield's hardness was more than the damage dealt, nothing happened to the shield. But if the damage dealt is more than the hardness of your shield, the carryover is applied to you. Think as if someone was using Greater Sunder against you, and your shield becomes dented. If your shield becomes dented too many times, it breaks and is unusable. One of the players at GaryCon did play Valorous, and now that I think of it, Valorous on the playtest core rulebook art is not dual wielding, he is sword and board. I don't know why I didn't realize that, maybe I was too busy looking at the fact that there's a goblin behind him with a bomb, but in the playtest, Valorous had a heavy steel shield which had a hardness of, the player at GaryCon who wrote this post thought was 9. Valorous and the rest of his party went up against a group of skeletons, and since those skeletons hit for d6 damage, Sword and Board Valorous could use one of his actions to raise his shield and could shut off that damage entirely. Of course, if anybody hits for more than 9 damage, Valorous would take the rollover. Think again like Greater Sunder, or all you Magic players out there think Trample. And to me, this actually sells, using a shield. I almost always, when I'm building a character, go the two-handed, I'm going to smash you over the face with my egregious strength score route, or I dual wield and I try to stab you in the ribs with my egregious dex score. And a lot of times when I see players use shields, it's always like instinctively in my head like, oh, you could be doing so much better, what are you doing? In 2nd edition Pathfinder, however, I am super stoked for shields. Shields appear to be super relevant, and also since we're looking up the hardness of stuff and we're using essentially Greater Sunder, that's pretty crunchy. That does a lot to assuage my fears of Pathfinder 2.0 turning into a 5e clone, and that feels really great. Top it off with the fact that now I can use a thrown weapon without playing a certain archetype or jumping through like 25 hoops to get there. And yeah, sure, by all means, sign me up. Real fast before we take off, some other things I've been able to distill. Summon spells cost 3 actions. The summon shows up right away with 2 actions. Your spells are prepared using different spell slots instead of a spell being a given spell slot. So if I'd like to prepare Fireball as a 5th level spell, now I can. There will be official retraining rules in the core rulebook, which is super relevant because that's one of the most important rules that Paizo tacked on as Pathfinder got older and older, and officially, though we don't know exactly who, some alignment restrictions, not all of them, some alignment restrictions will be leaving Pathfinder. Now, does that necessarily mean our Druid can be of any alignment? No. Does that necessarily mean our Paladin can be of any alignment? I'm gonna cross my fingers on that one and hope, but no, we don't know who, but we do know somebody will. Speaking of paladins, the detect alignment spells will now change in their use. You won't necessarily pick up an evil aura, but you can pick up things like evil intent, which is super wonderful for the parties who might have some random guy show up playing a paladin, detect somebody who's evil, and then, you know, start a huge fight in the middle of the party. But we don't do that. We're good PCs. Again, we'll probably try to touch base every week or so as I continue to sift through and distill all this information that's beginning to float around internet land. If you guys know anything about 2nd edition, throw it in the comments below and we'll keep the conversation going about it for sure, because I am definitely just as curious about all the information going around as you are. So stay tuned right here at Black Dragon Gaming for all of your sweet Pathfinder 2nd edition info. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. We'll see you next time.